Hello, and welcome to this Heroes of Black Reach tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be looking in detail at units. There are three different types of units in Heroes of Black Reach. They are infantry, light vehicles, and heavy vehicles. Here we can see three different types of units. On the left-hand side, we have an infantry unit. In the center, we have a light vehicle, and on the right-hand side, we have a heavy vehicle. Each type of unit is identified by a different color. This allows you to tell at a glance whether the unit you're looking at is infantry, a light vehicle, or a heavy vehicle. Infantry units have a yellow-orange background color. Light vehicles have a dark red background color. And heavy vehicles have a dark gray background color. Units come in different sizes and represent everything from a single character all the way up to a huge vehicle. So here we can see Sergeant Tellian. He's just a single character. All of the units in Heroes of Black Reach have been drawn from a top-down perspective. So if you were playing this game on the tabletop with miniatures, then this is what Sergeant Tellian would look like. You can see that this top-down view of Sergeant Tellian looks very similar to Sergeant Tellian as a miniature. So individual characters are the smallest kinds of units in the game. Next, we have slightly larger tiles that contain two or more individuals to make up a small squad. In this case, the tactical squad. And then there are larger tiles which represent larger units such as this Predator tank. So this tile would take up 2 grid squares in the game. And we also have very large vehicles. So this Land Raider Redeemer would take up a 2x2 grid of squares. So each unit in Heroes of Black Reach has lots of different symbols on it. So let's have a look now at what some of those symbols mean. So here we have Sergeant Tellian once more, and we're going to go around his tile and look in detail at what each of the different symbols means. So starting in the top left corner, every unit has a badge, which denotes the faction of that unit. So this shows that Sergeant Tellian is a member of the Ultramarines, and that he's a member of the command squad. Next, some units have a role. In this case, Sergeant Tellian has a yellow border, and that identifies him as a leader. In the bottom left corner is a blue arrow that contains a number. This is the movement value for Sergeant Tellian. This says he can move up to 4 squares. The unit's name is shown at the bottom of the tile. Next we come to the hit marker. Hit markers come in 2 different types, or 2 different states, and I'll look at those a little bit later. Next we have the special abilities, listed on the right hand side, and also the star on the left hand side. They are all special abilities that apply to Sergeant Tellian, and different units will have different special abilities. On every unit you'll see this cluster of 4 numbers. So let's go through what do they actually mean. So the number at the bottom in the center is a unit's defense value. And as we've already identified, the background color of that shows the type of the unit, which in this case is infantry. You can think of the defense value of a unit as its strength. In order to injure a unit, you often have to overcome that value. So the larger the defense value, the stronger the unit. To the left-hand side of the defense value is the combat value against infantry. So whenever Sergeant Tellian is attacking another infantry unit, he will use that +2 modifier to influence his firing and assault attacks. Moving round, the next value shows Sergeant Tellian's combat value against light vehicles. Again, notice the color coding. So that dark red corresponds to light vehicles. So I'm sure you can guess what the last one corresponds to. So that's Sergeant Tellian's combat value against heavy vehicles. So the larger the modifier, the better that unit is against units of those different types. So you can see here that Sergeant Tellian has a +2 against infantry, so he's good against infantry, but only a +0 against heavy vehicles, so he's relatively weaker against heavy vehicles. Now we'll have a look at a heavy vehicle. Here we have a Predator tank. Now you'll notice with the Predator tank that it has 2 clusters of those 3 blocks of modifiers. This is because the Predator tank has 2 weapons, a primary weapon and a secondary weapon. The modifiers for the primary weapon have a red border. The secondary weapon has a yellow border. The special abilities for the primary weapon have a red border, and the special abilities that correspond to the secondary weapon have a yellow border. So we can see that the Predator has a defense value of 8. Its primary weapon is very good against infantry and light vehicles, and its secondary weapon is good against light vehicles and heavy vehicles. If possible, it would make sense to fire the primary weapon against infantry units using that +4 modifier, and to use the secondary weapon against light or heavy vehicles in order to use those +5 or +4 modifiers. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but if you do, it makes sense to try and understand the strengths and weaknesses of the unit that you're using. Next, we'll look at what happens when units take damage. In Heroes of Blackreach, all tiles are double-sided. So this tactical unit has a healthy side and a damaged side. Currently it's showing the healthy side, and you can tell this by looking at the hit marker in the bottom right-hand corner of the tile. The white hit marker has a circle around it, which indicates that the tile should be flipped over if the unit takes a hit. So when a unit takes a hit, simply flip over the tile, and the back of the tile shows the unit in a damaged state. So previously there were 3 members of the tactical squad, and now there's only 2. The squad also now have slightly weaker modifiers against infantry and light vehicles, but their defense value has increased. That's because there are only 2 of them now, so they're just a little bit harder to hit. Notice also that the hit marker is no longer a white skull, but is instead a red skull. This red skull, along with the red colour that's used for the unit name, signifies that this unit is damaged. If the unit takes another hit, the tile will be removed from the game. Some units, such as this attack bike, only have a single life. So when this attack bike is hit, it is immediately destroyed, and the tile is flipped over to reveal this crater. When heavy vehicles are hit, they leave behind a wreck. Heavy vehicles don't just take a single hit to destroy them, so when they do succumb to a devastating hit and are destroyed, then the token is flipped over to reveal a wreck. This wreck then becomes part of the battlefield scenery. This gives Heroes of Blackreach a very dynamic battlefield. Some units can be in different states on the battlefield. So this Orc Tankbusters unit is a heavy weapons squad. You can tell that because its roll is coloured in red, so it has that solid red line highlighting things at the bottom of the tile. The Tankbusters squad have 2 different states. They have an active state and an inactive state. A unit that's in its inactive state will have this icon that's composed of 2 arrows. In their inactive state, the Tankbusters are more mobile with a movement of 3. Then when the unit becomes active, they place their weapons onto tripods and get ready for the enemy. So at that point their symbol changes, so it's now 2 arrows but with a line through them. That signifies the active state. And the unit gains the special ability of Overwatch, which means that they can fire when the enemy is moving. Notice also that their movement has gone down to just a single square. That's because their weapons are now set up and they can't move so freely. You'll also notice that the Tankbusters have the red skull symbol on both sides of the tile. That's because the Tankbusters can only take 1 hit before they're destroyed. Another unit that has the active and inactive symbols is the Scout unit, here shown on its inactive side. So here the Scouts are just acting like any other unit of troops. They're visible and they've got good movement. However, when the unit chooses to become active and the tile is flipped over, at that point the Scouts become much harder to see and much harder to target on the battlefield. So in this tutorial we've covered the different types of units in the game. That's infantry, light vehicles and heavy vehicles. We've looked at the different sizes of units, everything from single characters all the way to huge tanks. We've looked at the details on the unit and how to understand many of the symbols that are written on the units. We've looked at what happens when the unit is damaged, the tiles are flipped over. And then we've looked at units that have different statuses, active and inactive states. I hope you found this tutorial to be useful. If you've not played this game before and are interested, or you're just getting into the game, then don't forget to subscribe because I'll be producing more of these tutorial videos in the future. Thank you, and see you next time.